off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the Bank of England Gold Vault. Located in London, England, of course, this gold vault is loaded. It's of course the United Kingdom's largest gold vault, and compared to the rest of the world, and what you're about to hear in this list, the London Gold Vault is the second largest in the world. In this chamber of secrets lies around 46 million tons of gold. The door is heavily protected, but even if you had a key or two, it's still not that simple to enter the vault. A sophisticated voice recognition system alongside multiple 3-foot-long keys are the only way you're getting in this vault, should you get in. The bank won't officially say how reinforced the door is or how deep down the actual vault is buried, but what we do know is that the vault has more floor space than a 47-story building, so plenty of room to walk around. You'll just have to be the queen to do so comfortably. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Hard Rock Vault. We'll switch it up a bit for this next one here. The Hard Rock Vault, you would assume, holds a fine collection of gems or minerals. Hard Rock Vault, of course, there's some diamonds in there, right? Well, maybe Neil Diamond, if anything. The Hard Rock Vault first opened in 2001, and it holds hundreds of priceless musical treasures. Anything legendary in the form of music, you'll find it over here. Jimi Hendrix's Flying V, John Lennon's handwritten lyrics, and artifacts we don't even know about. It's of course below London's Hard Rock Cafe, but that building used to be Coutts Bank. Before the building was rebranded, this vault used to hold the Queen's treasury. Now it's got John Lennon lyrics. In our number 8 spot today, we have Granite Mountain. Don't let its name fool you, Granite Mountain is much more exciting than it sounds. Since the mid-60s, Granite Mountain has secured the Mormon Church's genealogical library. Of course, like every great vault, it has to be buried. This library is buried 600 feet beneath the mountain, where it holds roughly 3.5 billion images or microfilms. The documents, agreements, archives, you name it, they all come from libraries and churches from more than 100 countries. So yeah, there's a good chance somebody you know has a record hidden deep within Granite Mountain. Let's just hope they don't have your recently deleted photos. Fingers crossed! The facility is also protected by armed guards as well as a 13-ton nuclear blast resistant door. In our number 7 spot today, we have the London Silver Vaults. Everybody's always talking about gold, well there's other vaults too. Okay? Burl's Ives sang about silver and gold, not just gold. Both are beautiful. England's Silver Vault may not be hidden underground, but the vault has actually survived a world war. During World War II, the bank around the vault was reduced to rubble after an overhead strike. Nothing was left from the bank except this vault. Not even a war can open this one up. Historically, we have numerous reasons to trust this one. Back in 1957, the same type of vault was used as part of a US nuclear test in Nevada. Turns out not even a 37 kiloton nuke can bust these secrets open. In our number 6 spot today, we have Fort Knox. Located in Kentucky, USA, this vault really is the jackpot. One of the most heavily guarded places on the planet. The amount of gold in here will blow your mind. Fort Knox is home to a large amount of the United States gold reserves. Thing is, even if you work here, you're still not getting into Harry Potter's vault of treasure here. Each staff member knows only a part of the full combination, so you can't heist your way in with good work friends. Rumor has it there's actually no gold in here though. Rumor has it instead that this is where they study extraterrestrials. Another rumor is that the United States actually sold off all of the gold and they don't want anybody to know. In our number 5 spot today, we have the New York Federal Reserve. Far below the streets of Manhattan, next to the Ninja Turtles themselves, sits a vault so impenetrable it's been entrusted to more amounts of gold than the previous entry on this list. Security is of course pretty tight, so don't even think about pulling a national treasure. Human beings can't even operate here. Just robots. That's right, if you want an up-close look for yourself, you better become a cyborg. Pallets of gold are moved around only by a team of robots. And on the outside, it certainly doesn't look like an easy entry. Expert marksmen watch the perimeters at all times. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Vatican Archives. The Vatican secret archives are no joke. The archives themselves are 53 miles long, and there's around 35,000 volumes of catalog. They're very real, but in order to see them for yourself, it's gonna take some time. The indexes aren't public. Only scholars can access them after they're 75 years old, so bit of a waiting game. Their official purpose is to house wholly official paperwork, and of course it's a treasure trove of anything and everything related to the Pope. It's full of ancient documents, like say, a letter from Mary Queen of Scots herself. Mary was eventually sentenced to death for conspiring to kill Queen Elizabeth I, but before she met her fate on February 8, 1587, she wrote a letter to Pope Sixtus V, literally literally begging for her life. That exact letter is one of the many secrets lurking in the Vatican archives. In our number 3 spot today, we have the third secret. When it comes to hidden documents in the archives, we have to mention a few. This thing is chock full of ancient secrets. Do you really blame me? One of these secrets is the literal third secret of Fatima. It all began in 1917 when 3 children from Portugal received prophecies. They were visited by the Virgin Mary 6 times. The apparition is known as Our Lady of Fatima. The Virgin Mary told them 3 secrets. The first secret was a vision of the underworld, of hell, that was revealed July 13th, 1917. The second secret was a statement about World War I ending, as well as a prediction of another war during the reign of Pope Pius XI should Russia not convert and should men continue offending God. The third secret Lucia chose not to disclose in her memoir in 1943. It was written down later on and delivered to Rome in 1957. The third secret was about the 20th century persecution of Christians that came together in the failed killing of Pope John Paul II that was attempted on May 13, 1981, which was the 64th anniversary of the first apparition. Many believe the third secret is still unknown and the answers lie in the Vatican. So far, many believe the third secret has something to do with nuclear wars and natural disaster. No spoilers here. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Svalbard Vault. Over the pandemic, I spent a lot of time playing video games, and some of my favorite games always have a similar theme. They have this post-apocalyptic feel. I'm looking at you, Last of Us 2. There's shelters with survivors or even vaults. It's stressful, but really engaging. In real life, we have the Global Seed Vault, and it's deep in the Arctic Circle on the island Spitsbergen, and it's this massive bunker that has since been deemed the Doomsday Vault. This is where humans will store food crops. It contains 100 million seeds, so if the Earth all of a sudden gets wiped out, or even if all of the ice melts, this vault will still be good to go. All that water that's just flooded the rest of the humanity will regrow the Earth. It sounds like a fun, cute way to get humans to think about the future, but I'm concerned. In our number 1 spot today, we have WikiLeaks. When it comes to these massive websites, specifically streaming sites, companies need to have a home base for their servers. We're in a studio in Toronto. We get to work, we clock in, we clock out. We have servers here that run the show behind the scenes. A lot of fans moving around in this building, keeping everything cool and operating smoothly. Thing is, we're part of YouTube, not WikiLeaks, so we don't need to set up camp in an underground secure vault. Whereas a company like WikiLeaks, they need to keep their resources locked down. This is the same company responsible for leaking army field reports from 2004. In Stockholm, buried 100 feet below the street level, is an old nuclear bunker. Today, it's a facility owned by Swedish internet provider Bahnhof, which is where they keep each and every server for WikiLeaks. Julian Assange, frontrunner for this whole operation, he keeps his hard drive in this secure vault. He keeps it behind a 2-foot steel door accompanied by numerous backup generators, so you're not getting through any firewall. Like I mentioned, in October 2010, WikiLeaks published Army field reports from 2004, and it is now one of the biggest leaks in United States history. This report confirmed that there were over 66,000 civilian deaths in the Iraq war logs out of the 109,000 in total. This leak also suggested that some American troops were classifying civilians as enemies in their statistics. These numbers were from 2004 to 2009. Sometimes these vaults hold the secret to Coca-Cola, and sometimes they hold dark secrets surrounding the troops.
Coming in at number 10, the Husa Castle Pit. Located in the Czech Republic, the Husa Castle is considered to be one of the best preserved of its time. But despite its beautiful exterior, dark secrets are believed to lie beneath. Long ago, when it was built, the castle was constructed on top of a giant pit, believed to be a gateway to hell. Now, why anyone thought it was a good idea to build on top of that, I'll never understand, but I guess they thought if they built on top of the hole, it would shut the gateway off from the living world. As the legend goes, when they started construction, all prisoners that were on death row were offered pardon if they agreed to be lowered by a rope into the bottomless pit. When the first prisoner was lowered, loud screams immediately rang through the town, and when he was pulled back up to the surface, he looked as though he had aged 30 years, his face wrinkled and his hair now white. Terrified of what lay beneath, the castle was built and the pit was never explored again. Next up at number 9, we have room 873. While many of us know Banff for the gorgeous, picturesque Rocky Mountains, in the famous Fairmont Hotel, there lies a dark secret. Room 873. As the story goes, years and years ago, an entire entire family was killed in this very room. After a long investigation, the room was refurbished and went back into the usual cycle. But soon after, hotel staff were receiving many disturbances about the room that sent their blood running cold. Guests said they would fall asleep only to be awoken by screams, and that when the lights turned off, bloody handprints would be found on the mirrors. Staff would rush to the room to investigate, but all seemed to have disappeared by the time they got there. Afraid of what lurked inside, the room was sealed shut and never to be entered again. And if you go there now, no trace of the room exists. There is only a long hallway where a door used to be, but if you knock along the wall, you'll hear a hollow noise where it is believed the room was once sealed many years ago. Next up, at number 8, Aramu Muru. Located roughly 35 kilometers from the city of Puno, the Aramu Muru is believed by many to be a portal to the gods. First discovered in the early 1900s, it's thought to have been built by the Incas, but no one actually knows what its original purpose was for. At the front of the structure lies a small doorway that is said to be a gate to the gods, and legend has it that the only way to get inside was with the possession of a golden disc that supposedly dropped from the sky. Then, once the disc was placed in a small depression in the door, the portal to another world would open and anyone who entered was never to be seen again. While none of these tales have truly been confirmed, many locals believe in the folklore and will visit the door to ask for peace from the gods. But tread carefully, if it really is a portal to the gods, we have no idea what could be behind it. Next up, at number 7, Taj Mahal. Arguably one of the most famous mausoleums in the entire world, it was originally commissioned in 1631 by the Emperor Shah Jahan to house the tomb of his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal. But despite its public attraction, there are actually 20 locked doors that have never been revealed to the public eye. Lots of speculation revolves around what could be behind these mysterious doors, but so far, no one knows for sure what. But with so much else open to the public, what is it about these rooms in particular they don't want us to see? Maybe it's for our own good. Next up, at number 6, the Brompton Cemetery. There are a few things it seems pretty safe to want to avoid, and mysteriously sealed mausoleums housing the dead seem pretty high up on that list for me, but apparently not for all. Located in West London in the Brompton Cemetery lies a tomb that some believe to be a fully functioning time machine. Yes, you heard that right. Inside the tomb lies a woman by the name of Hannah Courtois, who had inherited quite a fortune. She was supposedly a friend of Joseph Bonamy and Samuel Warner, the men who built the tomb, and as the story goes, these two men convinced her to finance the secret project with the promise of laying her down to rest inside once it was finished. Strangely, Warner died shortly after the construction finished, and some think he died after discovering something horrid inside the tomb, while others speculate that Bonamy killed him for revealing the secrets of the time machine itself. It is thought that it is Hannah's burial that is some kind of TARDIS capable of whisking one back to ancient Egypt or even turning back the clock and providing youth to those who find it. All that is needed is a large bronze key, but as luck would have it, it has been missing since its creation 150 years ago. Next up in our number 5 spot, the Sphinx. This world-famous statue is no secret to archaeologists and tourists alike, but as it turns out, there is more than meets the eye with this peculiar lion-human hybrid. Under the left ear of the Sphinx lies a small chamber named the Hall of Records. Legend has it the Hall of Records contains documents pertaining to unknown ancient civilizations and even the proof of Atlantis. Well, that is according to clairvoyant Edgar Cayce. No one has ever been able to get past the chamber to prove what lies on the other side, and the Egyptian government is in no rush to let anyone try. I for one am dying to know what is behind this door, but it seems like we'll just have to wait and see if anyone is able to prove the visions of Edgar Cayce once and for all. Next up at number 4, Area 51. The scapegoat for many conspiracy theories, Area 51 is the top secret Air Force facility in Nevada, long thought to be the location of many unexplained phenomena. phenomena. But not too long ago, thanks to Google Maps, a picture of a rather large crater in the area started circulating the internet. Conspiracy theorists from around the globe quickly chimed in, believing the crater to be an entrance into a top secret underground military base. Now, if you take a closer look, it does look like there's some kind of object poking out of the center, resembling some kind of man-made tower or something, but considering that this is inside Area 51, I'm not so sure we will ever really know the truth about this strange passage. Next up, coming in at number 3, Machu Picchu. High in the Andes Mountains lies Machu Picchu, an ancient citadel and the most viewed tourist location in Peru. But recently, a bone-chilling discovery has been made. Through the power of electromagnetic equipment, a strange chamber appears to have been concealed behind the walls of the popular attraction. But despite many appeals, the Peruvian government refused to allow the door to be opened. Do they know something we don't? What lies behind the door remains completely unexplored, and since its discovery has been strictly prohibited, and anyone who attempts to trespass will be sure to get a huge fine. I don't know about you, but it definitely feels like they're hiding something from us, but I guess the bigger question is, do we really want to know what? Coming in at number 2, Mausoleum of Chinxihuang. Buried deep in China and surrounded by an underground moat poisoned by mercury lies the tomb of China's first emperor. Discovered in 1974 by a group of 5 brothers, they found the mausoleum protected by over 7,000 terracotta warrior statues, but to this day the actual tomb containing the remains of Chinxihuang remains a mystery. Despite not even entering the locked door, all 5 brothers died young, and many believe they were cursed upon discovering the tomb. Ancient writings depict the tomb containing an entire underground kingdom, but we'll never know for sure unless someone is able to get past the underground Mercury River without dying and open the tomb to see for themselves. And coming in at number 1, we have the Padmanabhaswamy Temple. In Kerala, India lies a grand temple containing 6 sealed underground vaults. Now, since its discovery, 5 of the vaults have actually been opened. Inside they found treasures, jewels, and gold worth millions, but there still remains one vault they have not been able to crack. Legend suggests that a spell is what is required to get the last door to open, hence why the same prying methods used on the other 5 have been unsuccessful. Even more, the story says that anyone who tries to pry open the door by force will be cursed for all eternity. Researchers are no closer to opening this mysterious door, but experts believe that it could hold treasure that the world has never seen before.
Number 10. Alexander the Great's friend. Okay, we didn't find Alexander the Great yet, but we did find the tomb of somebody close to him. That's pretty exciting. We're getting close. That's definitely a good first step. Back in 2012, over in Greece, archaeologists discovered a tomb that of course dates back to the time of Alexander himself. Now this tomb, the Costa tomb as they're referring to it as, is beautiful. It's covered in beautiful painted scenes depicting ancient Greek mythology. It's wonderful. Whoever was buried here got a mosaic, so they must have been quite important. If you get pillars after death, you must have been a leader in some way, shape, or form. Since the tomb was open, researchers have found 5 bodies, all important figures in history, but none are confirmed to be that of Alexander the Great. Just, close acquaintances. That's not bad. Number 9. Queen Nered. Just over a year ago, the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities announced the discovery of Queen Nered, aka the wife of King Teti, aka the first pharaoh of Egypt's 6th dynasty. They found her burial shaft and there were coffins, mummy artifacts, all dating back to the New Kingdom, meaning that the Saqqara necropolis was used in the late period, but now apparently it was also used in the New Kingdom as well. That's news to all of us here, in this decade. Perhaps the most questionable find was that of a 4-meter long scroll. That was the 17th chapter of the Book of the Dead. Yeah, let's not touch that maybe. I don't know, just an idea off the top of my head. As well as funerary masks, miniature boats, and 50 coffins, this thing was fully loaded. Again, this is the first time 3,000-year-old coffins were found in the Saqqara necropolis, and there's probably a lot more. Number 8. Necklace from the Egyptian afterlife. We're all curious what happens after you die, but nobody celebrates the end of your days ceremonies like ancient Egyptians. Like I mentioned earlier, they would paint doors, sometimes they would leave valuables. It's all sacred and beautiful. And of course, any new tomb that we discover provides more hints as to what lies beyond. Maybe. An ancient necropolis was discovered a few years ago in Egypt. It contains dozens of coffins and a necklace that holds a message from the afterlife. Yeah, let's grab that, I guess. Let's take a peek. That's getting cursed 101, I guess. This site is around 2,000 years old, and right now they're in the process of excavating it as we speak. But so far, the tombs and the artifacts found belong to an ancient priestess. A message from the afterlife is pretty spectacular. How far do we need to go before we get cursed? You know what I mean? Let's just let people rest. Just kind of stop opening these tomb doors, perhaps. Number 7, Poland double tomb. All right, time to get cozy for this one. Grab a friend, I guess. All around the world, there have been only a handful of two-person tombs discovered, and it's exactly what you think it looks like. This is the only one that's found in Poland. Back in 2015, archaeologists discovered this 2,000-year-old necropolis that had been sitting there for centuries just at peace until we came along. Now we're like, hey, wake up, what's going on? Is that a jewel? Nice. Message from the dead? Sweet. All mine now. Now we gotta open things up and lick rocks, whatever geologists do, I don't know. And lo and behold, there were around 120 tombs discovered in total. That's a lot of souls, a lot of curses. They were all used from the 1st century to the 3rd. Now among these 120 tombs were a two-in-one rather, that stood out. A tomb that archaeologists referred to as princely. The pre-war's culture in Kujawi were in fact Celtic, so their burial process was Celtic as well. Now it's a little odd of a find. A Stone Age Celtic necropolis in Poland. You're like, where do I even begin? What year is this? Where do I start? Number 6, Celtic warrior shield. And another recent find, here we go. This one was referred to as the most important British Celtic art object of the millennium. So not a bad title if you ask me. A little wordy, but you earned it. An Iron Age chariot burial was discovered in Yorkshire a few years ago, and researchers were excavating a house development in Pocklington, and then all of a sudden they find a soldier's tomb. Awesome. Can we go home today? I think we're done for the day. Let's call it. The soldier was laid on a chariot with the Celtic shield laid over top. Now this shield was also dated back to 175 BC. Yeah, a lot to unpack right here. I mean, first of all, most Iron Age shields up until this point didn't have a scalloped edge, but for some reason this one here did. Up until this point, we thought metal shields were only used for ceremony, but this one's been used, repaired, and then used again in battle. There are clear sword marks, each that tell a story. Yeah, let's just go poke around a Celtic warrior tomb. What could possibly go wrong? Number 5, the sitting man. Okay, of all the tombs to find, all the doors to open, these legendary age-old necropolises, this one would scare the shit out of me, I think, probably the most. Back in 2005, researchers found a Mayan tomb in Honduras dating to around 650 AD, and the body was in a chair, and it was sitting up. That's horrifying. I would have ran out of that tomb so fast if that's the first thing that I saw. This man was an elite member of the Mayan Empire. He passed away around 650 AD, and his legs were crossed, and he was rocking jade jewelry sitting up. It's beautiful, haunting, definitely, like what the f, but also beautiful, sure. The tomb also had to be positioned upright. Now these types of tombs are quite rare to find, but the fact that this one also has somebody sitting cross-legged, double rare. Hit that thumbs up for double rare. Would you ever walk into a tomb? Like, would you ever do this as a job? Open these ancient doors and just find anything? Sound off below. This is a terrifying job. Number 4, Paris catacombs. These catacombs date back to the late 1700s, and they're literally full of bones, so it's no surprise that some entrances and compartments have been blocked off, hopefully, ideally forever. The catacombs' history is pretty twisted. When the city's cemeteries were filling up back in the 1700s, and I mean that in a literal sense, filling up piles of bodies, officials began moving contents all over the city to these, abandoned mines. Then the catacombs were opened in 1809. What a fun family excursion that must have been. Awesome. They designed the catacombs with the walls of skulls to ensure that visitors would meditate on death once they arrived. Gotta say, I think they nailed it. I think they pretty much nailed that mark. We're all gonna think of death when we look at a wall of skulls. I'm sure everybody who visits thinks of nothing else. In order to ensure that this was the vibe of the room, there's a phrase carved above the entrance, and it translates to, "Stop, this is the empire of the dead." Awesome, say no more, I'll be on my merry way. Cheers. I'm like, entrance of the dead. No, it's not the exit, we're good, it's this way. Number 3. 86 tortoises, not 85, 86, we counted. Back in 2005 in northern Israel, a tomb of a shaman, who we believe was a 45-year-old woman at the time of her passing, was found in a cave. Again, I imagine this was a quite jarring discovery, just like, there were the remains of 28 others as well. So again, it was a beautiful cave tomb. She had a 6-stage burial, it seems. There were beautiful decorations, but something that really stood out, aside from the 28 others and the, beautiful tomb, were the 86 tortoise bodies lying around, signs of an epic feast from many, many moons ago. That's a odd image to walk into. Whoever this woman was, there was one hell of a party at the end of her days. Everyone's eating tortoises like crazy. On one hand though, imagine finding the shells of 86 ancient tortoises. Tortoisei? That's jarring. I'd be like, Mario, what did you do? What happened in this cave? Number 2, Newgrange. Or Newgrange. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Here we go. Heading over to the beautiful Ireland for this one. Newgrange is this massive circular tomb. It's an ancient mound protruding from the earth. Now the tomb is roughly 5,200 years old, meaning that this passage tomb in the Boyne Valley is older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza. Stone Age farmers built this mound. It's 85 meters in diameter and 13 meters high, and a tomb that takes up an acre of space. What's going on inside? Don't we want to know? The passage and main chamber just happen to align with the rising sun on the mornings around the winter solstice. So that's pretty spectacular. That's some great planning. And if that's not fancy enough for you, the tomb is also surrounded in a ring of large curbstones. There's 97 curbstones that surround Newgrange, some even engraved in megalithic art. One probably says Todd was here, and you're like, people suck, really? And finally, number 1, the Terracotta Army. The tomb of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, aka China's first emperor. Now in this tomb, we can find 8,000 statues, that's a lot of statues, but they all have unique carvings on their face, as if to suggest these are all custom made for each soldier, all 8,000. This is a very personal tomb. You're literally disturbing the dead on a level next to unheard of. 8,000 souls are trying to rest, and we're out here trying to find treasure, or another Brendan Fraser mummy plot, I don't know. The emperor believed that after he had passed away, he would have to face off against the spirit of his enemies once again after death, so he wanted to be prepared even after life was over. So the emperor decided one day to close the tomb before the workers even had a chance to get out, because he was paranoid that his enemies had already found out about this tomb. Cursed? Yeah, I would say so. Let's just shut this tomb forever and call it a day. Maybe, hopefully, I don't know.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Mezgor. This is a location in Russia that finds its home in the Ural Mountains. This little town is top secret and is completely forbidden to any kind of visitor. This is said to be because the town is apparently home to Russia's nuclear missiles, and the rules are so strict that people aren't even allowed near the town or in its vicinity. There are also rumors that suggest this town contains Mount Yamantau, and that inside this mountain there is the Russian government's extensive bunker, making this just another reason why this town is completely cut off to anyone who isn't a very high-ranking official. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Lasar Cave. This cave is located in France, and it got itself the title of being a UNESCO World Heritage Site after its discovery in 1940 due to the incredible prehistoric paintings that can be seen on the walls. Of course, this became a popular tourist destination, and people were jumping at the chance to see these works of art completed by the early humans, but as it turns out, breathing is not good for the art. The carbon monoxide that visitors were expelling was beginning to cause damage to these cave paintings, and of course, once they're gone, there's nothing we can do to get them back. This led to the site being closed to the public in 1963. Now, the only people allowed in are researchers and preservationists who work to make sure the art stays for as long as possible. In our number 8 spot today, we have Fort Knox. The Fort Knox vaults are home to most of the US gold reserves, and it's one of the most heavily guarded places on the entire planet. It's so heavily guarded, in fact, that there isn't one single person who can make it into the vault. This is because there are several combinations that need to be used, and no one knows all of them. There are various members of the staff who know just one of the necessary combinations, which means that without the help of their colleagues, and quite a few of them, there wouldn't be any way for them to gain access. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Vatican Secret Archives. This area is located within the Vatican, and it contains 53 miles of shelves that contain documents relating to the Catholic Church, some dating as far back as the 8th century. These archives contain things like a letter from Mary Queen of Scots when she addressed Pope Sixtus V, where she begged him to help save her from her fate. Some other documents in the archives include ones that detail and relate to the excommunication of Martin Luther. In 1881, these archives were opened only to researchers, but it's not exactly an easy task to get a pass. Anyone who applies and gains one will only have it for 3 months, however, and despite the massive size of the archives, no more than 60 scholars are allowed in at one time. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Svalbard Seed Vault. Deep within a mountain that sits in between Norway and the North Pole sits this vault that is more than 300 120 feet inside the mountain. This vault holds a massive collection of seeds. Like, we're talking about 890,000 different preserved seed samples from nearly every country in the world. The vault that holds these seeds is made to withstand both man-made and natural disasters, and the seeds inside are meant to be kept safe, so in the case of some sort of huge disaster, the seeds inside would ensure the continuation of a wide variety of diverse food options. The door to this vault is only opened a few times a year, and just a few people are allowed inside in order to deliver seeds to the shelves. In our number 5 spot today we have DMZ. Despite what this name says and implies, the Korean Demilitarized Zone is perhaps one of the most militarized places ever. This is the location that marks the separation between North and South Korea, and it was established to serve as a sort of buffer zone between the two countries. There are tons of military facilities in this zone, and only high-ranking officials are allowed in. This is exactly what led to the creation of the Civilian Control Line, which is a line that created an additional buffer zone to the Demilitarized Zone, which is meant to further restrict access to any civilians or unauthorized personnel. In our number 4 spot today we have Cery Island. This island was born in 1963. By that, I mean it emerged from the sea in that year just off of the coast of Iceland after 4 years of being formed by an undersea volcano. A brand new island? What could we possibly do with that? While I'm sure humans could find 1,000,001 ways to ruin it, surprisingly we decided to not do that at all. Instead, this island was protected in order to allow scientists to study how new ecosystems form and what happens when there's no human involvement. This means that those who are permitted to go to the island have some super strict rules to adhere to, and it's not like just anyone is allowed to go. One of these rules is no seeds and no using the facilities on the island. The last rule is because one day when scientists found a tomato growing on the island, they were quite confused as to how. It turns out that somebody had gone number 2 not too long before, and thus a new poop tomato was grown from the ground. So let's slice of that for your BLT. In our number 3 spot today we have Snake Island. This island is located in Brazil and is one of the most dangerous in the entire world, and that is because it is absolutely filled with snakes. It is thought that Snake Island came to be when the snakes got trapped as a result of the rising sea levels, which disconnected this island from the mainland. The reason people aren't allowed to visit is obviously to protect the humans who want to go, but also to protect the snakes that live here, as some of them aren't seen anywhere else in the world, likely because of the lack of human interference. There's a critically endangered species of snake called a golden lancehead, and on this island there are about 4,000 of them, which is critical to the species continuing on. As of now, only a select few researchers and the Brazilian Navy are permitted to go to the island. In our number 2 spot today we have Zone Rouge. This area, also referred to as the Red Zone, is an area of France that is one of the most restricted on Earth. Located in northeastern France, it is said that this chain of uninhabited areas was completely destroyed after the events of the First World War. The area contains a mass amount of both human and animal remains, along with way too many unexploded weapons that have gone on to contaminate the surrounding water and land. This has led to the French government prohibiting any kind of activity in the areas that includes any sort of agriculture or settlement. I mean, I would not particularly want to risk it with the undetonated explosives, so it completely makes sense as to why this area would be restricted. In our number 1 spot today we have Pine Gap. This location is in Australia, and it is a heavily guarded and top secret facility. It is said that Pine Gap is actually a joint defense facility between the Australian and the United States governments. It is said that it is operated by both the CIA and NSA, and that it is strictly off limits to anyone not involved or given high security clearance. Apparently, at first this place was said to be a space research center, but now it has become abundantly clear that it is actually used to support the United States in both intelligence as well as military activities. If someone decided to trespass into this top secret area, it would undoubtedly put them in a whole world of trouble.
Coming in at number 10 is Fort Delaware. Fort Delaware, built in the 19th century to protect the ports of Wilmington and Philadelphia, served as a prison camp for Confederate prisoners of war during the Civil War. Almost 13,000 prisoners were held at one time, and around 33,000 were kept there in total over the course of the war. Now, conditions were rough, and around 2,500 men died at the fort. The fort was then abandoned towards the end of World War II and became a state park in 1951. Today, it is extremely haunted. It's rumored that throughout the parade grounds, Confederate spirits roam, still trying to escape from the fort. One of the most popular stories is of an attempted escape from a Confederate drummer boy. Legend has it he tried to fake his own death in order to be transported back across the river in a coffin. Waiting on him on the other side of the river were either sympathetic Union troops or fellow inmates who were supposed to free him from the coffin. Unfortunately, a shift changed SWAT personnel, and instead of being freed, the boy was buried alive. Now there's also a photograph that was taken of a ghost there who's called the Blue Man, and this place is just filled with ghosts roaming around. Number 9. Poinsett Bridge. Poinsett Bridge is the oldest bridge in South Carolina and perhaps the entire southeastern United States. According to local folklore, Poinsett Bridge was built on the site of an old Indian burial ground dating back to when Cherokees were the only inhabitants of the mountains of the Carolinas, Georgia, and Tennessee. With this, it's no shock that this place is haunted. Other stories go that some of the men who worked to build Poinsett Bridge died during the bridge's construction due to a variety of illnesses, one of which was malaria. These men were then supposedly buried under and even within the bridge itself. Now, according to one legend, a slave was once hung under Poinsett Bridge and his ghost still haunts it, said resident Doris Davis. The bridge is haunted by those who helped build it but got none of Joel Poinsett's glory. The ghosts of the slaves who died during construction sometimes reappear as lights in the surrounding woods and on the bridge itself after dusk and hover in mid-air for a few seconds and then vanish. Number 8. Eastern State Penitentiary. Eastern State Penitentiary is a former prison in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The punishments here were horrible. There was a water bath in which inmates were dunked then hung up on a wall in winter until ice formed on the skin. There was the mad chair, which bound an inmate so tightly that circulation was cut off, later necessitating amputations. There was the iron gag, in which an inmate's hands were tied behind the back and strapped to an iron collar in the mouth so that any movement caused the tongue to tear and bleed profusely. And then there was the hole, which was an underground cell where prisoners had no light, no human contact, no exercise, no toilet, and little food and air. With all these horrors, it's no shock that the place is haunted. Cell block 12 is known for echoing voices and cackling, cell block 6 for shadowy figures darting along the walls, and cell block 4 for visions of ghostly faces. Many people have reported seeing a silhouette of a guard in one of the towers. There's footsteps, and one of the most legendary tales comes from Gary Johnson, who helps maintain the crumbling old locks at the prison. In the early 1990s, he had just opened an old lock in cell block 4 when he said a force gripped him so tightly that he was unable to move. He described a negative, horrible energy that exploded out of the cell. He also added that tormented faces appeared on the cell walls and that one form in particular beckoned to him. Number 7. Bodie. Bodie is a ghost town located in California. In the 1870s and 80s, Bodie boomed when gold was found in the hills surrounding Mono Lake, which at one point was home to 10,000 people. It's now a state historic park, with some parts of the town preserved in a state of arrested decay. Now, there are many reports of supernatural activity here, including ghost sightings and music playing from shuttered bars. There's also a legend that any visitor who takes anything from Bodie, even a rock, will be cursed with bad luck and health problems upon leaving. According to park rangers, many who have taken things eventually return them to the park to rid themselves of this curse. Now, the Gregory House is said to be haunted by the ghost of an old woman. Guests and staff have reported seeing her sitting in a rocking chair knitting an Afghan. Other times, the rocking chair has been seen rocking on its own. The Mendocini House is called home to several friendly ghosts. One is thought to be Miss Mocindy, who loved to cook her Italian food, and rangers report today that they often smell the delicious aroma of her cooking when they enter the house. Number 6. Emily's Bridge. Emily's Bridge in Stowe, Vermont is a 50-foot long bridge that's said to be the site of a young woman's death in the mid-1800s. According to legend, the woman, Emily, was supposed to meet her lover at the bridge to elope, but she ended up hanging herself from the rafters when he never showed up. Today, Emily's ghost is said to haunt the site, and instead of being full of sorrow, she's full of vengeance, as it's been reported that she claws at passing cars and even scratches the backs of pedestrians until they bleed. There are slightly less menacing spooks as well, like images of a white apparition and strange voices and footsteps coming from the tunnel. Number 5. Letchworth Village. Letchworth Village, located in New York, is a complex that used to be a mental institution from 1911 to 1996. Now, like most mental institutions, it closed after controversial experience on mental patients were condemned. The village, at the height of treatment in the 1960s, 1960s employed more than 10,000 locals who oversaw the patients on the grounds. Leworth Village's reputation began its downward spiral in 1972 when journalist Geraldo Rivera published an expose on the cruel practices at Letchworth. Some things he revealed were, from the 1930s to 60s, Letchworth was a testing ground and then a frequent utilizer of electroconvulsive shock therapy, both as a treatment model and to see what effects it had on the brains of the feeble-minded morons, imbeciles, and idiots, to use the official medical terms of the times. Now, most of these patients didn't survive, or they ended up far worse than they started. In the 1930s and 40s, trepanning and lobotomies, physical and chemical, were carried out in secret, often as a part of research studies. More than 800 people died as a result of mistreatment or experimentation, and they were buried in unmarked graves at the far end of the Letchworth property. Number 4. The Shanghai Tunnels. The Shanghai Tunnels in Portland were built by Chinese workers during the time when Chinatown was the center for trade business. The tunnel's original design was for transporting goods from cargo ships to the inner city. By using the tunnels, the ship's crew could avoid the hassle of inner city traffic. Now, the tunnels get their name for the practice of kidnapping and selling men as workers on ships headed to East Asia. Restless, agitated spirits of men who were drugged and trafficked in the city ports during the early 19th century are said to haunt the underground tunnels, through which they were reportedly sold. Legend has it that local saloons contained entrances to the tunnels, enabling swindlers to prey on unsuspecting patrons and bring them directly underground before they even knew what was going on. Now, deep within the tunnels, travelers have reported feeling goosebumps as if someone is watching them from the shadows. Many people report seeing an Asian man walking past them in the tunnels, and explorers name the spirit Sam and say that he is responsible for turning off the lights in the bar basements. Sam also likes to move things around in the tunnels as explorers walk by. Now, up until 2023, visitors could also take walking tours to learn more about the dark history of the tunnels, but the tours have ended indefinitely. Number 3. Northern State Mental Hospital. Northern State Mental Hospital in Washington operated from 1912 to 1976. Like countless other mental asylums of the time, grisly experiments were performed on patients, some of which have even been rumored to be part of the top secret government program MK Ultra. Now, patients were being subjected to treatments like insulin shock therapy, lobotomies, and electroshock therapy. Heavy sedation with powerful drugs was also a common form of treatment, but truly it was just to keep patients in line and submissive. Now, countless patients died here, and rarely were the bodies claimed by families, so their disposal was left to the state. According to hospital records, 1,487 bodies are buried on the grounds of the asylum. The Washington state legislature cut off funding to the asylum, and in 1976, Northern State officially closed its doors. Now, with so much suffering, death, and disregard for human life, the place is just straight up haunted. Most of those who were admitted weren't actually suffering from severe mental illness and were sent to the asylum to live out the rest of their lives under lock and key. Those who dare visit the asylum grounds report strange phenomena such as cold spots, the feeling of being watched, disembodied voices, and the feeling of being touched. Now, some have seen strange shadows darting around the graveyard. Now, the most commonly encountered entity is that of a young girl with a red ball and a man chasing after her. They've been seen running around the property, though some report the girl standing alone in the graveyard as well. Number 2. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park in West Virginia is full of history. Legend has it that this land in Rock, West Virginia was once occupied by the Clay family, whose sons and daughters were kidnapped and had their lives ended by Native Americans, while the father, Mitchell Clay, was out hunting. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park opened in 1926 and was abandoned 40 years later after a girl died on the swing set and a boy drowned in the pond. In 1985, Gaylord White, a former employee of the park, purchased the land with plans to reopen it, but those dreams were put to a stop after human remains were found buried on the property. There were 13 skeletons in total. White believes the premises to be haunted and says he's seen the girl who met her fatal end after a truck backed into her on the swings. And coming at number 1 is Summerwind Mansion. Summerwind Mansion in Wisconsin is believed to be one of the most haunted places in the US. This abandoned building is located on the shores of West Bay Lake in Vilas County on private land. The Lama were the owners of this mansion, and for 15 years of their occupancy, they experienced strange things. In the mid-1930s, as the family was busy dining, the door to the basement opened with a man appearing out of thin air. Limit shot at the spirit twice and chased him back into the cellar. The family later moved out, leaving the mansion empty until the 1970s when Arnold and Ginger Henshaw purchased the building to turn it into a dream home. However, the paranormal activity chased the crew away, and the Henshaws then took the renovation work into their own hands. Even then, the strange happenings did not stop. One night, Mary, Arnold's daughter, found a human skull and a handful of black hair in a hidden crawl space, which mysteriously disappeared when the police decided to investigate the house years later. The Henshaws started behaving abnormally, and strange things still happen at that mansion, even after its destruction by lightning that occurred in 1988, leaving much of it completely destroyed.
Starting us off at number 10, we have Fangu City. Nestled on the banks of the Yangtze River, Fangu Ghost City's spooky past dates back over 2,000 years, and the legend associated with it is bone-chilling to say the least. As the story goes, thousands of years ago, two Eastern Han Dynasty imperial officials named Ying Changsheng and Wang Fangpin came to the city to practice Taoist rituals that eventually made them immortal. Combining their surnames produced the phrase Ying Wang, which means King of Hell, and they were said to drag all the local villagers into the underworld. Fast forward to today, and the area is surrounded by temples and shrines dedicated to the underworld, and visitors who dare enter can journey through the dark paintings and sculptures lining the temple walls, each depicting scenes of villagers being tormented for their sins. But even scarier is that Fangu is home to 3 sites that ghosts must visit before they can visit the underworld: Nothing to be Done Bridge, Ghost Torturing Pass, and Tianzi Palace. It's said ghosts must take tests at each place, and that those who will pass go to heaven, and those who fail will go to hell. Moving on to number 9, Yongshan Fandian Hotel. It wouldn't be the first creepy and haunted hotel, and it most certainly won't be the last. This 220-room hotel, located in the city Shangda, north of Beijing, overlooks the Yangtze River, and it was supposedly built on land that was once a part of the Qing dynasty's royal gardens. Said to be haunted by the Empress Cixi, many guests and hotel staff alike have reported seeing her ghostly apparition float through the halls. But be careful, she is not always friendly. While some accounts merely mention that she likes to appear on the 8th floor and look at her old gardens, some of the more terrifying encounters claim her spirit will be sitting eerily in the shadows of random hotel rooms, and if you look directly at her, she will lunge right at you as if she's about to attack, right before turning into mist and disappearing. And then she does it all over again. Moving on to number 8, the Forbidden City. Located in Beijing, the Forbidden City was built in the early 15th century during the Ming and Qing dynasties under the reign of the Emperor Yongle, who was infamous for his wickedness. For example, on one occasion, he tried to suppress a scandal by slaughtering 2,800 people. But really, execution of any kind was not uncommon, and anyone who went against the emperor's rule was easily removed. In the following few thousand years, the Forbidden City remained an imperial palace and became the site of many deaths, homicides, assassinations, and executions. So really, it's no wonder that the place is haunted. In fact, ever since it was open to the public in the 1940s, people have reported seeing ghostly apparitions. Some claim to have seen the ghosts of eunuchs, brides, and soldiers, while others have heard women talking and laughing, a woman in white crying, or even heard eerie music playing out of nowhere. But scariest of all are the sightings from 1995. One of the guards encountered a woman in black, whom he initially took to be a trespasser. But when the woman turned to speak to him, he saw she had no face. I would not be returning to that job if it were me. Moving on to number 7, Huguang Wuguang. In 1807, a wealthy philanthropist had the Huguang Wuguang Guild Hall constructed in Beijing with only the best of intentions, to provide a traditional gathering place for the community as well as shelter to those who needed it. But little did he know that the chosen site was partially on top of an ancient graveyard, and the deceased apparently didn't appreciate the disturbance of their final resting place. And ever since, the building, which now operates as an opera house and museum, is said to be haunted. According to one story, in the early 1900s, the owners hired a housekeeper who had been severely disfigured by leprosy, and apparently the man's appearance was thought to repel the ghosts, so they stayed dormant for the time he worked there. But after he left, the ghosts returned. Ever since, people have heard screaming and seen strange sights at all hours of the day, and legend has it that anyone who tries to throw a stone on the property will be haunted and followed by scolding ghosts for as long as they remain. Moving on to number 6, Keishaku Execution Grounds. Located in western Beijing, during imperial times, the Keishaku Execution Grounds, as the eerie name would suggest, were a location where public executions were carried out as a form of capital punishment. Those convicted of treason or serious crimes against their family were brought here to be tormented and executed by a variety of cruelties, including beheading, strangulation, or something called lingqi, which is known as death by 1,000 cuts. On the day of the deed, which was always scheduled promptly at 11:30, it was customary for the convicted to be carted into a wine shop for one final drink of rice wine before facing their slow and painful death. So, as you can imagine, there are a lot of reports of spooky and haunted phenomena. Nowadays, while it no longer serves its original purpose, visitors passing by have reported encountering the spirits of the dead when strolling around these haunted streets. And some even say that if you visit right at 11:30 a.m., you can still hear the screams of all of those who lost their lives. Moving on to number 5, Tuen Mun Road. Built in 1977, Tuen Mun Road is a very busy highway that is said to be one of the most haunted and dangerous stretches of road in the entire world. According to the South China Morning Post, there were 250 traffic accidents on the highway between 2010 and 2012, and many suspect that with each death, even more accidents are bound to occur. Citizens claim that the ghosts who died on this highway continue to haunt it, and some even think there are some malicious, vengeful spirits looking for revenge on their lives taken too soon. The reason being is that some claim that while driving on the road, they have suddenly seen a ghost appear in front of their car, forcing them to swerve in a panic and almost crash, while others claim that spirits have actually seized control of their vehicle and driven them off a bridge. So I would definitely avoid this one if you can. Moving on to number 4, Se Ying Pun Community Complex. Located on High Street, Hong Kong, the Se Ying Pun Community Complex was built in 1892 with the mission of providing housing for European nurses. But during World War II, under Japanese imperial rule, legends say the Japanese army often used the complex as a site for executions. Then following the war, the complex was converted into an asylum that was then left abandoned after several fires. And many think that between the deaths in World War II and the maltreatment of patients in the institution, the complex remains haunted by all different kinds of spirits. People claim to have seen headless poltergeists running down the corridors in the middle of the night, while the second floor is said to be haunted by a devilish-looking creature in traditional Chinese dress that spontaneously bursts into flames. Others have reported hearing the footsteps and screams of a girl or woman who is attacked by a Japanese soldier, and overall it's just a super creepy and haunted location. Moving on to number 3. Konai Number 81. According to legend, sometime in the middle of the 20th century, the building became the home of a powerful nationalist party official, but when the communists defeated the nationalists at the end of China's Civil War in 1949, it said the terrified official fled his home and disappeared off to Taiwan, leaving his wife behind. As the legend goes, in her grief after being left behind, his wife took her own life in the house. And many believe she continues to haunt the abandoned property to this day. Some people that have visited say they can hear her screams echo throughout the halls. Others say they've seen feet dangle from the rafters, but when they get close enough to help, it's as if they vanished into thin air. But that's not all. A number of disappearances have also been linked to this haunted house. It's said that the house was built for an English priest to be used as a church, but that he disappeared before construction was completed. When investigators searched the house, they found a secret crypt that opened onto a tunnel. And in 2001, legends say a group of construction workers renovating the basement adjacent to the building thought it would be fun to break through the thin wall separating the properties, and they were supposedly never seen again. Moving on to number 2, Chao Mansion. Near the beginning of the 20th century, the Chao brothers came to Shanghai as migrant workers and dreamed of becoming rich. Shortly after they arrived, they happened upon a warehouse that was filled with paint, which was becoming increasingly expensive, and that is when the pair's dream ended up coming true. They made their fortune selling the paint after World War I, and with the money, they built identical mansions next to one another in the heart of the city. The Chao brothers became notorious for their lavish and luxurious lifestyle, collecting exotic animals like tigers, crocodiles, and peacocks. But then suddenly, at the height of their fame and notoriety, the brothers mysteriously vanished and were never seen again. Following their disappearance, the mansion fell into disrepair, and it said neighbors even broke in to loot their riches and kill their exotic animals. Since then, people have claimed that the ghosts of the slain animals haunt the Chao mansions, and people have reported seeing and hearing strange noises and howls echo throughout the halls. One woman claimed to have seen a dragon crawling on a crane. In another incident, a mason attacked his manager after claiming lizards had ordered him to do so. But even scarier, night guards working for the Four Seasons Hotel across the street have sometimes gone to the hospital to be treated for unexplained animal bites. And last up in our number 1 spot, the Great Wall. Now, the Great Wall of China is easily the most well-known monument in the entire country, as it's also one of the 7 wonders of the world. But wouldn't you know, it's also rumored to be extremely haunted. And honestly, when you think about it, it's not that far-fetched. It's said that 1 to 2 million workers died during the centuries of construction, and many claim that their ghosts continue to haunt the wall to this day. Visitors have reported seeing ghosts along the wall or hearing the sounds of marching footsteps while no one else is around. Others have experienced more intense sensations, like sudden feelings of uneasiness, attacks of nausea, pain, or headaches, while the scariest encounters reported being slapped, punched, or grabbed by unseen beings. Now, according to local legend, the Wild Wall located north of Beijing is said to be the most haunted section, and apparently several hikers have actually died in the area under mysterious or inexplicable circumstances. But before you decide to never visit the wall, local legend claims that while you can expect to be haunted or even tormented by ghosts of the dead workers, you can also scare them away by stepping over a line of firecrackers.